Adam Peters has just put the entire future of this franchise at risk with a gamble that could lead us to glory or sink us into the deepest abyss. While our star cornerback with 4 Pro Bowls is dangerously wavering between greatness and disaster, a rookie is stealing the spotlight in a way that has everyone in the DMV talking. And if you thought that was it, wait until I tell you about the most brutal fall we've seen since this new administration came to power. Stay until the end, because this bombshell is going to completely change your perspective on the future of the Commanders. After decades of watching this team suffer with cornerbacks who seemed recruited from the Sunday League at the park, we finally thought Adam Peters had found the definitive solution. But it turns out he sold us a mirage that could cost us not just this season, but the credibility of this new era. Do you remember that epic moment before the 2024 trade deadline? I'll tell you this, that moment felt like when you finally snagged those Super Bowl tickets you always dreamed of, only to find out the stadium is falling apart. Martian Lattimore came from New Orleans with a resume that included 4 Pro Bowl selections, a Defensive Rookie of the Year, and the reputation of being one of the most respected shutdown corners in the entire league. We here in the DMV were ecstatic. After years of watching mediocre receivers burn us like they were running against practice dummies, we finally had a guy who had shut down Adree Hopkins, Mike Evans, and practically every star receiver in the NFC South. The expectation was that this man was going to completely transform our secondary. But here comes the harshest reality, as Ra's ADC winter without heating. 1 week, Lattimore plays like the shutdown corner we all expected, covering receivers as if he had a personal GPS connected to their every move. But the next week, he looks like a rookie lost on his first day, more confused than a tourist trying to navigate DC's metro during rush hour. And you know what's the most frustrating part? We can't call it coincidence anymore. We have a large enough sample to determine this is an established pattern. This guy has gone from being ultra-reliable to more unpredictable than traffic on the I-495 on a Friday afternoon. Look at what specifically happened against Atlanta, and I want you to understand every technical detail of what's going on here. Drake London, that 6-foot for Falcons receiver, literally made fun of Lattimore all afternoon. Now I ask you, how can a cornerback with Lattimore's experience allow himself to be dominated by route patterns any high school defensive coordinator can recognize? The most embarrassing moment was when London executed a basic double move, and when I say basic, I mean something they teach at youth camps, and Lattimore bit the bait like it was his first time seeing football. Michael Penix Jr. threw that ball with surgical precision, and Lattimore was more lost than a Cowboys fan at FedEx Field during the playoffs. Not even his penalty for defensive holding could save the play. Do you understand what this technically means? It means Lattimore wasn't just burned in coverage, but he recognized he was burned, tried to compensate with a foul, and still couldn't prevent the completion. That's a triple failure in a single play. But here's what really worries me as an analyst who's followed this team for decades. The Falcons were testing Lattimore systematically. It wasn't a coincidence they kept attacking his side of the field. Arthur Smith and his staff had identified a specific weakness and were exploiting it, as if they had an instruction manual. I think this goes much deeper than simple technical adjustments. When a player of Lattimore's caliber shows such dramatic inconsistencies, we're talking about mental issues, confidence problems, or worse, the possibility that his window for elite performance is closing. And you know why this keeps me up at night? Because Peters conceded valuable capital for this player. We're talking draft picks that could have been used to strengthen other critical positions. The salary cap space we're dedicating to Lattimore is significant. And if he's not producing consistently at a Pro Bowl level, then we're literally paying a Ferrari price for Honda Civic performance. Now I ask you something fundamental. How long are we going to wait for Lattimore to find his level? Because Adam Peters isn't the kind of general manager to sit idly by watching his investment collapse in front of his eyes. This man has already shown with decisions like the one involving Chase Young that he doesn't care about names, statuses, or previous expectations when a player isn't meeting the required standards. The situation becomes even more complicated when we consider the divisional context. Do you think CeeDee Lamb from Dallas isn't studying films of how London attacked Lattimore? Do you think A.J. Brown from Philadelphia isn't taking notes on those specific patterns that worked? In the NFC East, you can't afford to show weaknesses because they'll be exploited immediately. I tell you this, Jerry Jones must be laughing in his office watching us spend resources on a player who can't maintain consistency. Meanwhile, The Eagles keep building a solid secondary with young and hungry players who play with a chip on their shoulder. The pressure on Dan Quinn and his defensive staff is immense too. Quinn built his reputation by developing elite secondaries in Atlanta and Dallas. If he can't bring out the best in proven talent like Lattimore, then legitimate questions arise about whether the defensive system is optimized correctly. But you know what's most concerning of all? We can't afford these ups and downs. While we're in the middle of building something special here in Washington, Jaden Daniels is playing at a level that exceeds all expectations. Our offensive line is improving week by week. The running game is working under Quinn's scheme. We can't let the inconsistency of a single player, regardless of his pedigree, sabotage all the progress we're making as an organization. This season represents a real opportunity to lay the foundation for years of competitiveness, and we need every piece of the puzzle to function at a maximum level. The harsh reality is that Lattimore is at a career-defining crossroads. Either he finds the consistency that turned him into a star in New Orleans, or he becomes another example of a veteran player who couldn't adapt to a new system and new expectations. If Lattimore's situation has you worried, get ready, because what comes next will completely restore your faith in the future of this franchise. While we deal with inconsistencies in the secondary, we have a diamond in the rough that's shining exactly when we need it the most, and in a way that has the whole coaching staff completely amazed. Luke McCaffrey, younger brother of superstar Christian McCaffrey, came to Washington as a third-round pick in 2024, and I'll be completely honest with you, most of us thought he would be just another project that would never come to fruition, but it turns out we were completely wrong. Do you remember the doubts we had when Peters selected him? I tell you this, many analysts questioned whether McCaffrey had the ceiling necessary to contribute significantly at the NFL level. He came from Rice University, a school not exactly known for producing elite wide receivers, and there were legitimate concerns about whether he could transition from a smaller program to the intensity and speed of the professional league. But here's what nobody anticipated. With Terry McLaurin and Noah Brown out due to injuries, McCaffrey hasn't just filled the void. He's done it in a way that's forcing Cliff Kingsbury to completely rethink his offensive approach. This kid isn't just surviving, he's thriving under pressure. The play against Atlanta that has me completely blown away was that reception in traffic, where Marcus Mariota threw a laser that cut through the air like a guided missile. McCaffrey didn't just make the catch, but the way he positioned himself, attacked the ball, and maintained possession through contact. That's NFL veteran technique. But let me explain why this play is so significant from a technical perspective. McCaffrey was running an intermediate route against Atlanta's nickel coverage. The safety over the top had rotated late, leaving a very small window for Mariota to fit the ball. Most rookies in that situation either drop the ball or fail to find the soft spot in the coverage. But do you know what McCaffrey did? Recognized the coverage rotation mid-route, adjusted his depth accordingly, and presented a perfect target for Mariota to deliver the ball. That's veteran-level football IQ in the body of a rookie. I think what we're seeing goes far beyond simple raw talent. We're seeing a player who understands the game at a cerebral level that can't be taught. And that, combined with the McCaffrey genes that obviously run in the family, is creating an explosive combination that can transform our receiving corps for years. Now I ask you, do you think it's a coincidence that McCaffrey is performing at this level just when we need him most? I tell you no. This kid has been preparing for this moment since he arrived in Washington. While other rookies struggled with the playbook, McCaffrey was studying additional film, working extra hours with the coaches, and perfecting his craft. The kick return he executed to put the team in outstanding field position was another example of his football instincts. Did you see how he identified the lane, hit the hole with authority, and maximized every available yard? That's not luck, that's preparation meeting opportunity. But here's what's really exciting about McCaffrey's development. He's performing well in multiple facets of the game. He's not just a one-trick pony who can catch passes. He's contributing on special teams, showing versatility in different route concepts, and most importantly, showing that clutch gene that separates good players from great players. And you know what has me most excited as a longtime Commanders fan? That McCaffrey is doing this while competing against significantly older and more experienced players. When Kingsbury acquired Deebo Samuel Sr. and drafted Jalen Lane in the 4th round, many assumed McCaffrey would get buried in the depth chart. But this kid refused to accept that narrative. Instead of pouting or giving up, he doubled down on his preparation and seized every opportunity presented to him. That's exactly the type of mentality this organization has been lacking for years. The chemistry connection that's developing with Mariota is also noteworthy. Chemistry between quarterback and receiver can't be forced. It has to develop naturally through countless hours of practice and game experience. The fact that McCaffrey and Mariota are already showing this level of synchronization bodes extremely well for the future. Now I ask you something important. Do you think McCaffrey can maintain this level of performance when McLaurin and Brown return from injury? I think so, and here's why. This kid has proven that he belongs on the field with NFL players. He's not just filling a temporary void. He's establishing himself as a legitimate weapon that Kingsbury can utilize in various situations. The versatility McCaffrey brings also creates matchup nightmares for defensive coordinators. Can you imagine the possibilities if Kingsbury can utilize McCaffrey in slot formations, while McLaurin works outside? Or the potential for screens and underneath routes that play to McCaffrey's strengths after contact. Jerry Jones must be kicking himself watching how we develop young talent. While Dallas continues overpaying for veterans past their prime, the Eagles may have their established receivers, but none have shown the upside potential we're seeing with McCaffrey. What really has me optimistic is that McCaffrey represents everything this new administration stands for: identifying talent, developing it properly, and giving opportunities based on merit rather than draft position or salary cap investment. Peters and Quinn are building a culture where performance matters more than pedigree. And do you think McCaffrey is satisfied with where he is right now? You're crazy. This kid has tasted success at the NFL level and wants more. The hunger he's showing in practice, according to reports from inside the building, is infectious. Other young players are seeing his example and raising their own standards accordingly. The timing also couldn't be better, with Daniels showing tremendous promise as our franchise quarterback. Having reliable targets like McCaffrey developing alongside him creates a foundation for sustained success. These two can grow together, develop chemistry, and become a formidable combination for years to come. And when you thought we were done with surprises, here comes the most brutal news that best reflects the ruthless transformation that is occurring under this new administration. Brandon Coleman has just experienced the most devastating fall any young player can face in this league. And this serves as a stark reminder that in Adam Peters' NFL, there are no safe spaces or participation trophies for the second consecutive week. Coleman was declared a healthy scratch. For those who don't fully understand what this means, let me paint the picture perfectly clear. Coleman is completely healthy, physically capable of playing, but the coaching staff preferred to literally leave his roster spot empty, rather than give him an on-field opportunity. Can you imagine the psychological devastation this represents? Less than 2 years ago, this young man was a star at TCU, projected as a potential starter on our offensive line. And now he can't even earn a backup role when we're dealing with multiple injuries across the offensive line. I tell you this, in the past, this organization would have continued giving endless opportunities to their early round picks, regardless of how poorly they performed. Remember players like Ryan Kerrigan, who received chance after chance simply because of his draft position and potential. But those days are officially over. The situation became crystal clear after Chris Paul, who entered the game in Coleman's place against Las Vegas, performed at such a high level that he literally stole the starting job. Cliff Kingsbury initially stated that Coleman's benching was injury-related, but now that Coleman is completely healthy and still not seeing the field, the truth has become undeniable. But do you think this is simply about one player failing to meet expectations? Absolutely not. This represents a fundamental shift in how this organization evaluates talent, makes personnel decisions, and builds their roster for sustained success. Adam Peters and Dan Quinn have established a culture where merit trumps everything else. No matter where you were drafted, how much money was invested in you, or what your projected ceiling might be, if you can't contribute immediately and at a high level, you will be replaced by someone who can. And do you know why this approach is absolutely brilliant? Because it sends a clear message to every player in that locker room: your spot is never guaranteed. Your past accomplishments mean nothing, and every single day you need to prove you deserve to be here. Chris Paul's emergence also highlights something crucial about Peters' roster construction philosophy. Instead of panicking and reaching for expensive free agents when Coleman faltered, Peters identified a player who could step in seamlessly and contribute immediately. That's elite general management. Now I ask you something fundamental. Do you think Coleman can recover from this setback? The history of the NFL is filled with early round picks who never recovered from similar situations. Some manage to reinvent themselves and return stronger, but others simply fade into obscurity. I think Coleman's future depends entirely on his response to this adversity. Can he swallow his pride, accept his new reality, and work tirelessly to earn back the trust of the coaches? Or will he allow frustration and disappointment to derail his development completely? The pressure on Coleman is also intensified by the salary cap implications. Every dollar being paid to sit on the sidelines is money that could be allocated to contributors. Peters has shown that he isn't afraid to cut ties with underperforming players, regardless of draft position. But here's where the situation becomes even more complex. Coleman's struggles aren't occurring in isolation, and Drew Wiley has stepped up significantly. Sam Cosmi is expected to return from injury, and the offensive line as a unit is showing improvement every week. Where exactly does Coleman fit into these plans? The harsh reality is that Coleman may need to consider a position change, a different role within the organization, or potentially face the possibility that his time in Washington might be limited. That's how quickly things can change in this league. Jerry Jones would have kept Coleman on the roster simply to justify the draft pick investment. The Eagles might have continued starting him while hoping for improvement. But Peters operates differently. He makes decisions based on what's best for the team's immediate success and long-term sustainability. And do you think other young players on the roster aren't paying attention to Coleman's situation? You're completely wrong. Every rookie, every sophomore player, every bubble player is watching closely and understanding that their spot is never secure. This creates a competitive environment where players are constantly pushing each other to improve. No one can become complacent. No one can rely on past performance. And everyone understands that excellence is the only acceptable standard. Coleman's fall also serves as validation for Peters' draft strategy. Instead of reaching for need positions, Peters focused on selecting players who could contribute immediately and had the mental toughness to handle NFL pressure. McCaffrey's success combined with Coleman's struggles perfectly illustrates this philosophy. The most concerning aspect for Coleman is that time is working against him. Every week that passes without seeing the field makes it more difficult for him to develop game experience, build chemistry with teammates, and prove his worth to the coaching staff. But you know what? This situation also creates opportunities for other players. If Coleman can't step up, someone else will. If he can't handle the pressure, another player will seize the moment. That's exactly how championship organizations operate.